You ever wonder how something as huge as a world war can start from something that seems almost inevitable, like the slow, painful collapse of a giant empire? Well, it's a story about a power vacuum, rising ambitions, and a series of dominoes, each one tipping over the next. Let's follow that chain reaction and see exactly how the fall of one empire lit the fuse for a global catastrophe. By the early 20th century, there was this phrase on everyone's lips when they talked about the once mighty Ottoman Empire. It's a pretty chilling nickname, isn't it? And it perfectly sets the stage for the chaos that was about to unfold. So, what did that actually mean? Well, this wasn't just some clever insult. It was basically a geopolitical diagnosis. The empire was seen as the first wobbly domino in a very, very tense game. A former superpower that was now so weak it was struggling just to hold itself together.
All right, so to really get why this domino was teetering on the edge, we've got to look inside. Let's explore the deep cracks that were forming in the empire's foundation long before the first shots of the war were even fired.
First things first, let's just take a second to grasp the sheer scale we're talking about here. At its height, the Ottoman Empire was an absolute titan, stretching across 3 continents. To really understand the fall, you have to remember just how powerful it once was. But from the inside, things were, well, falling apart. And this wasn't some quick, sudden crisis. No, this was a slow burn, a kind of perfect storm of centuries-long military defeats, crippling corruption in the government, and economic problems that just wouldn't go away. Yeah, and you have to remember, this whole collapse didn't just happen overnight. It was this centuries-long process, like a slow erosion of power. I mean, you can see its military power starting to fade way back in the 17th century. By the 19th, it was practically hemorrhaging territory. This was a long, slow goodbye.
So, as the empire's grip starts to get weaker and weaker, guess what happens? The people it ruled start to get ideas. And that brings us to the next domino, the powerful, absolutely unstoppable force of nationalism. A brand new idea was taking hold. People wanted to rule themselves.
The first big cracks started to show up in the Balkans, which was, a total powder keg of different cultures and ambitions. Nationalist movements began bubbling up, demanding their independence, and the first to successfully break away? The Serbs. They rebelled and carved out their very own nation from Ottoman land. And that success, it sent a huge message. It wasn't long before the Greeks, inspired by what the Serbs had done, fought for and won their own independence, chipping away another vital piece of the empire's European holdings. And the pattern just kept going. Next up, the Bulgarians. See, each one of these successful rebellions was another hammer blow to Ottoman authority and a huge signal to the world that the sick man of Europe was losing his grip. Now, all of this weakness, it did not go unnoticed. Not by a long shot. The great powers of Europe saw this crumbling empire not as some tragedy, but as a massive opportunity. The vultures, you could say, were circling. So that begs a really important question, right? Why did they care so much? Why were major players like Britain, Russia, and the others so laser-focused on what was happening with the Ottoman Empire? Well, the answer boils down to one thing: strategic control. I mean, look at where the empire was. It was literally at the crossroads of the world. It controlled the only sea route between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, the Bosphorus and Dardanelles Straits, and it held the keys to vital global trade routes. This was the grand prize. And there were 2 big players, in particular, who had very different ideas about what should happen next. You had Britain, who wanted to keep the empire weak but still standing to protect its precious trade routes to India. And then you had Russia. Russia desperately wanted control of those straits to get its navy out into the warm waters of the Mediterranean. They were on a total collision course. Okay, so the stage is set. You've got a decaying empire, these new nations rising up, and a bunch of rival powers circling overhead. As Europe starts splitting into 2 armed camps, the Ottomans have to make a choice, and it's a huge one. I mean, can you imagine the pressure? This was the ultimate high-stakes bet. Siding with Britain and its allies, that felt risky. I mean, they'd been chipping away at Ottoman lands for years, but siding with the other guys was a massive risk too. So, what do? Where do you place your bet for survival? They made their choice. They decided to ally with Germany and Austria-Hungary, joining the Central Powers. This was the decision that would seal their fate and change the entire course of the war. But why them?
Well, it really came down to a desperate last-ditch gamble. The Ottomans were hoping that a powerful Germany could help them win back some of their lost land and really just secure the empire's survival against their old enemies, Britain and Russia.
And that decision, that was the final domino. It didn't just pull the Ottoman Empire into the war, it completely changed the very nature of the war itself, bringing in whole new regions and millions of people. The impact was honestly immediate and huge. With just the stroke of a pen, this alliance blew the map of the war wide open. What had mostly been a European fight now exploded into the Middle East and North Africa. It was now, for real, a world war.
So let's just run through that domino effect one last time, right? It all starts with the internal decline, which creates weakness. That weakness allows nationalism to catch fire and spark rebellions. Then, the power vacuum pulls in the big European powers, and their rivalry ignites the final fuse, leading to a world war. See how it all connects?
You see, the fall of the Ottoman Empire wasn't just the end of an old story. It literally created the modern Middle East and kicked off conflicts that are still playing out today. It's just a powerful reminder of how the fall of one power can create a vacuum that reshapes the entire globe. And that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. What power vacuums are shaping our world right now?